Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. This episode of Word Balloon is brought to you by AlexRossArt.com. Alex is a brand new graphic novel coming out from Marvel and Abrams Books. Fantastic Four, Full Circle. It comes out September 6th. It's a rainy night in Manhattan, and not a creature is stirring except for the Thing, Ben Grimm. When an intruder suddenly appears inside the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four find themselves surrounded by a swarm of invading parasites. These carrion creatures, composed of negative energy, come to Earth using a human host as a delivery system. But for what purpose? And who is behind this untimely invasion? The Fantastic Four have no choice but to journey to the Negative Zone, an alien universe comprised entirely of antimatter, risking not just their own lives, but the fate of the cosmos. Fantastic Four, Full Circle is the first long-form work written and illustrated by acclaimed artist Alex Ross, who revisits a classic Lee Kirby story from the 60s and introduces the storyline for a new generation of readers. Bold, vivid colors, his trademark visual storytelling, Ross takes Marvel's first team of superheroes to places only he can illustrate. The book also features a special poster jacket with the front flap unfolding to reveal an all-new, fully painted origin story of the Fantastic Four. Again, Fantastic Four, Full Circle, out September 6th. For more details, go to AlexRossArt.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntra is here. Man, I'm always happy to talk to JM Mark Dematteis. It's great to see you, Mark. Congratulations.
Good to see you too, John. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry it's been so long. I meant to talk to you earlier this year.
Yeah, I'm holding you responsible. In fact, I'm not going to talk to you, so we're done.
All right, I'll just show the flashcards of some of the stuff you got coming up. But I do, and you know, everybody, I'm sure you have Ben Riley questions. I'm sure you have other, classic Mark storylines that you'd like to talk about. But I really do want Mark to talk about the new initiative that he's got coming up very shortly from Spellbound Comics, and also a Kickstarter campaign. It's time for the Dematteis. Very exciting, man.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I think, honestly, John, as you know, I've been doing this a really, really, really long time. Too many years. I don't even want to say how many. This is one of the most exciting things I've ever been involved in. Since the beginning, I've always sort of divided my career into doing stuff, Marvel and DC stuff, and doing my creator-owned stuff, really starting with Moonshadow back in the 80s. And it helps keep me balanced. It helps keep me sane to be able to go off and just create my own stuff. So I'm always looking for new venues, and Kickstarter was always fascinating to me. But there was one thing that always held me back from doing a Kickstarter, which was basically, this looks like a lot of work and I don't want to do it. It's like so much work. And long story short, at one of my writing workshops a while back, I met a guy named David Baldy, who's a TV writer and producer of many years, and we became friends. And one day we were talking, and he said, "Hey, I'd love to do a Kickstarter. I'll run the Kickstarter for you." And I was like, wow. Really? Oh, you mean like I can focus on creative stuff, and you'll handle all the stuff that I don't want to go near? And yeah. So even longer story, even shorter. I had a bunch of ideas because, we always have a bunch of ideas. And some of these are ideas that I've been developing in some way, shape, or form for 10, 12, 15 years. One of them, I think, is more like closer to 20 years. Because as many freelancers know, what happens a lot is you get an idea, you get very excited, you write it up, you develop it, you pitch it, and it doesn't go. And I've had this happen with so many projects. And then you put it away for a few years, you redo it, you take it out, doesn't go, you put it away. And eventually, I've had things, that have been published that have taken 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So I've learned to nurse ideas along, and you go back and you revisit them and you revamp them and you deepen them and you expand them, And during the pandemic, I was working on a couple of these and developing them and writing scripts. So I pitched David like 4 different things, and he had this great idea. He said, well, let's do all 4 of them. So the idea that we cooked up, or really this idea came from him, was like, let's do 4 number ones, like four pilots. Each one's in a different genre. Each one's a different tone. Each one's a different style. I'm working with 4 artists that I love, and so they will be available as individual issues. They'll be available in a nice collected edition with all kinds of extras. I'm going to write essays. Tom DeFalco is writing an introduction. There's going to be all kinds of art. So it's and through this, we put together this imprint, the Spellbound thing, which is going to, which is the imprint that's going to carry these, and you'll be able to get the books supported through Kickstarter, or if you want to buy them directly through Spellbound, you'll be able to do that. And once the Kickstarter is over, the books will still be out there at Spellbound for you to buy. And so I'm just kind of over the moon to finally get these ideas out into the world. And I'm working with Matthew Dow Smith, David Baldion, Sean McManus, and Tom Mandrake. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
That's great, man. Yeah, I'm fans of all of them. And I look forward to talking individually. And in fact, even as you were talking right there, I was grabbing the covers or whatever splash pages you've put out on all 4 of these things. So it's
right. We've been slowly kind of letting out little bits and pieces the past couple of weeks. And the great thing about this also is we've been working on this for a while. So I know a lot of Kickstarters, people are giving their money and the work doesn't show up for like 15 or 20 years.
Well, you're right about it. Sometimes it is that long. That's not an exaggeration.
Oh, okay. Well, I was exaggerating to make a point, but now maybe I wasn't exaggerating. But all these books, by the time this Kickstarter is done, all these books will be done. We'll have the bells and whistles for the collection and things to put together. But basically, they're all in stages of completion even as we speak. So it's just really exciting. Really.
Where do you want to start? Which of the 4 would you like to start with? Any man or
let's start with Layla, because Sean McManus Sean and I have been talking about this one for a long time. Okay. And it's kind of, for those that know my work that maybe know Abadazad or the Stardust Kid, those projects I did with Mike Plug. Yep. It's an all ages fantasy. It takes place it begins in 1995. It's a 13-year-old girl. Long story short, gets swept away to what we think is this magical Oz-like land, another wonderland, fairyland. But it turns out no, that's not the case. Actually, this is the afterlife. These are the lands of after, and she's just been hit by a car and she's dead.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Nice.
So
here's a feel-good story.
Well, it actually is. And so the great thing is, but this kid is like, I'm sorry, I don't accept this. I refuse to be dead. So that begins the adventure and her journey to try to get back to the land of the living. And she meets some souls of people that she knows from her life. She meets some new characters, and it becomes a whole journey through these infinite lands, because basically the afterlife is created by the imaginations of the people that have died. So they're infinite. There's infinite heavens, basically.
That's kind of like that Robin Williams movie, right? What Dreams May Come.
Right, it has a little bit of that. Yeah, because that's an idea that you go into a lot of mystical traditions, and you'll find that idea there. And I think it's a beautiful idea that essentially hell doesn't exist unless we choose to create it. Heaven does. Same thing, frankly, with being alive. Most of a lot of the hells we live through are hells of our own creation, and we can create heaven if we wake up in the right mood tomorrow. Sean. Sean is right up there with like Plug as someone. There are very, very few people I think on the planet that can do it better than Sean. No, in fact, I'd say nobody can do it better than Sean. There might be a few people who can do it as well, but he's just, when it comes to creating fantasy worlds, he's incredible. He's just incredible. And so, like I said, Sean and I worked together on Dr. Fate years ago for DC. It's one of my favorite gigs I ever had. And so we've done a few little things together since that over the years, but this is the first chance to get back together and do something of substance. So that's the first one. Second one is, which one shall I pick next? Let's go with Wisdom.
Wisdom, very nice.
So you'll appreciate this, John.
Am I right on this one?
No, you're wrong. That's God's Son. Wisdom is the Western. There we go.
There we go. Here's the Western.
So I know you're an aficionado of like old TV and all that. So when I was a kid growing up, there was a point when I was 6 or 7 when I'd say half the shows on television were Westerns. I have pictures of myself 4 years old, in a cowboy outfit with my 6 guns and a cowboy hat, riding my hobby horse.
It is amazing. Yeah, it is truly amazing the amount of Westerns, because really, uh, 30 like a week. I mean, then that's not
Yeah, it
an
was insane. I
exaggeration.
mean, could you imagine? We think, there's like they think there's a lot of Law and Order shows or whatever. They're compared to what they had on TV then, it's nothing. Half the shows at least. So anyway, so every kid growing up in that era was a Western fan.
Sure.
Um, but as I got older, I lost that Western kick. And then what happened? You'll appreciate this too, because I know you're into old radio. I discovered uh, Gunsmoke, the radio show. And suddenly it kind of tickled that part of my brain that had that love of Westerns. Anyway, long story short, I wake up one day like 12 years ago. And what happens with me with stories is I start to see movies in my head. So I'm laying in bed in the morning with my eyes closed. I go, oh, here's an interesting movie. It's a Western. Oh, really? Oh, it's a supernatural Western. Oh, and then you run to the computer to get all this stuff down. And I have been developing this idea since then. And it's sort of like the one-liner we came up with is Deadwood meets Lord of the Rings, or
Ooh,
Gunsmoke meets John Ford's The Searchers. It's it's it's
cool.
it's pretty epic. It's pretty epic, and I'm really excited about all this. Now, Tom Mandrake, I have loved his work for years since I first saw him working on the Spectre with Ostrander years ago. And I think maybe he did a few issues of Scooby Apocalypse along the way, but we never, same thing, never did a big project together. And when I thought, you know Tom's work, he does supernatural and he does Westerns like nobody's business. And I think this is some of the best work he's ever done. So that's the second one.
Very exciting, man.
The
And
third one,
real
go ahead.
fast, I just want to point out that era of 50s and 60s, well, especially the 50s of Westerns and stuff. I think people will just say, oh, Hopalong Cassidy, Roy Rogers, and think of stuff like that. But no, the adult Western was really this very nuanced genre. And in fact, literally 2 nights ago on Word Balloon, we were discussing the career of Henry Silva, and we were talking about the Bud Bedecker film, one of his earliest films, The Tall T, with
I don't know that one. No.
that's Randolph Scott and Richard Boone, and it was Bud Bedecker, the director. And it's just like, I'm so glad you mentioned Gunsmoke, because it really on radio captured exactly that same High Noon and the
Yeah,
Bedecker films and
yeah.
Anthony Mann, those great filmmakers. Gunsmoke really grabbed that same vibe, especially on radio. I don't know why. I don't know if you real fast, because this is one of my favorite subjects, but for some reason, because I've really been trying to watch the earlier hour-long black and white Gunsmokes and even
hmm
the half-hour ones as
Not the
well.
same
And
thing.
it really is, and I love James Arness. I think he's the whole cast, amazing cast. So, are you
Yeah.
able to? Do you want to grab that, or are you okay
Oh,
to
no,
let
no,
it?
no. That's okay. That's okay. I
Okay,
didn't even.
no problem. But
Don't worry about
anyway,
that.
so no,
Yeah.
that
So
is so great
that's
to
yeah,
hear,
that's great.
and we're
And so
getting
I'm finally, after all these years, the little 4-year-old in me riding his hobby horse gets to do his Western, which is really cool.
outstanding. All right, so what do we
Um,
got next?
then we have Godsend. That was the one you had before
Yep,
with that
here
giant
we go.
weird turtle guy. And so this one, I can't say that much about because I don't want to give that much away. I keep my one-liner is Jack Kirby meets Philip K. Dick meets The Matrix. So it's got a Kirby Gods element. It's got that Philip K. Dick reality is not what you think it is, and that same sort of feeling that's in The Matrix. And this being, this godlike being that the media dubs Godsend, appears out of nowhere. No one knows whether he's here to save the world or destroy the world. And our main character, who is this basically schlubby, middle-aged junior high school teacher, insecure little guy, becomes obsessed with Godsend. Kind of reminds me of the way Richard Dreyfuss was in Close Encounters. When his whole world becomes this being,
Sure.
and he doesn't even know why he's obsessed until one day this weird turtle being manifests in his apartment and opens the door on another level of reality for him, and then the story takes off from there. So
Well,
I
I
get to do. Go ahead.
keep going. You
No,
get
that's
to do.
okay.
I was
I
going to
got the
say,
main points.
pointing out the image here in that shows all four concepts and stuff. No, you get that Kirby cosmic and really or 70s Marvel cosmic kind of vibe from
Yeah,
God.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and so is it and I hope I'm saying the word right, idolatry? I mean, is again, like you said, you don't want to say too much about it, but yeah, I mean, are you exploring that idea, almost what we're seeing even now with modern superhero films in terms of the iconic
Right, and
symbolism?
what I'm it's about a theme that I've written about my whole life as a writer. It's the idea of who we think we are versus who we really are, what we assume reality to be versus what reality really is. And if
Okay.
you know, you know that however much the Maya, the darkness of the world, wants to convince us that something really, really awful in life is terrible and miserable, I don't believe that. I believe that there's another level of reality beneath that that is sacred and magical. And this story explores those themes.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. And
Yeah.
then finally, we've got
Any
Any Man.
man, any man. Now, so David Baldion, I worked with him on Ben Riley. I had never heard of this guy before we worked together, and just fell in love with his work. You know, he does the big action beats like nobody's business, but he also can then turn on a dime and do these beautiful, quiet, emotional moments that'll like tear your heart out. And this story too is what I've been playing with in the back of my head, and had little notes on for years. And then suddenly I went, oh, there's the whole story, and put it together. So uh, Any Man, as we meet him, is one of these sort of classic, iconic superheroes. He shows up. He claims he's from, you know, an antediluvian time period like Atlantis. Before then, he's come through this time portal. His world has died. He's come to this crisis point. It starts in the '60s, in 1969, to help the modern world not go through the same thing that his world went through. He becomes this global hero, looked up to, revered by everyone across the world, and this goes on for 50 years. But that's the superhero coding. Underneath that is, it turns out that everything that we think we know about this guy is an absolute lie, and there's a whole other agenda going on here. Again, I don't want to say that much more, but and I get all these stories are fairly epic. Like with Any Man, as we hopefully will get to continue the story, it's going to take place. The story is going to jump back and forth over those 50 years. You know,
Okay.
wisdom is you know, takes place over a course of years, and it's big, like Lord of the Rings big. You know, Layla is lands of after. I said they're infinite, so the journey can take her anywhere. And then Godsend, what you see in the first issue, I hope the first issues will stand on their own and be satisfying on their own, but it's just the tip of an iceberg of really creating an entire universe of new characters that are going to come out of this, that I've got in my head and I've got in my notes. And when the story continues, you'll get to meet them all one by one.
Excellent, man. No,
Yeah.
that's great. I will say, of course, I do appreciate whenever you do address the idea of the superhero, and you pull it apart. Your Savior 28 is one of my favorites of creator-owned things that you've done, and Any Man obviously seems to want to scratch that itch as well. But again, as you say, you know, you see the vibes with Layla and Abadisad, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And no, I'm thrilled. Again, I think Godsend and Wisdom are excellent concepts as well. I think you got it going, Mark.
And what's great is, you know, look at all these artists and look at their styles. You cannot mix up one with the other, you know, and that's the fun of it. That, you know, and that's been the fun of my whole career. It's like, okay, I can go write Spider-Man. I'm going to go write, you know, Moonshadow or The Girl in the Bay or whatever it is I'm working on, or Savior 28, or, you know, and you can jump back and forth. I can do funny stuff with Giffen. I can do, you know, serious
Damn
stuff
right.
over here. I can do kid-friendly stuff. I can do autobiographical stuff. So it's always great to mix it up because it keeps you fresh. It keeps you interested. I was talking to somebody just recently about this. You know, the great thing about, I've been doing this for, okay, more than 40 years, which is astonishing because I'm only 39. And,
Wow.
and well, that's right, exactly. At least there's the one person that gets that joke. And
I know I'm talking to, man.
every time I sit down to work, though, and that's what keeps it fresh, every new story is just that. It's a new story. It's like I've never written before. You know, there's a concept in Chinese philosophy called the beginner's mind, that you should approach whatever you do as if you've never done it before. And that's really what writing is, you know. I have the muscles from 40 years of lifting those weights, yes. So throw me something, I'll create a story for you. But the bottom line is, with things, especially with things like this, like you're sitting down with a blank page, creating a universe out of thin air. You know, essentially you're God, speaking of spiritual themes, you know.
Yeah.
It's a great metaphor for the way God works. You know, that's the way I see God. It's like, okay, what story am I writing today?
But yeah, man, and your imagination is endless and goes into so many different directions, and that's why this idea of creating your own universe and these four very distinct ideas obviously supports that.
Yeah, and again, that's what keeps it fresh and exciting for me, because it doesn't get bored. You know, as long as you're creating something new, It doesn't get boring.
Henry, already, and I'm glad because it gives us an opportunity to talk about your writing seminars that you do as well. But
Right. Well,
he
let me just
asked,
say one more thing so people
oh,
know.
please,
If you want lots of information about these projects and what's going on, you can sign up for updates. Go to spellboundcomics.com. There's also a Spellbound Facebook group. So you'll get all the information you need. You'll get alerts on everything, and you'll be in the loop the whole way.
I'm creating a
Okay. Oh,
banner.
that was, I see the question here. When writing a story, do you
Yes.
write full script or do you use the Marvel method? I do both. When I started at DC, when I at the very beginning of my career, everything was full script. For those that don't know, full script, page one, panel description, caption, dialogue. You break down each page, you paste everything. It's all there. Marvel style, there's actually misconceptions about Marvel style because people hear the old stories about Stan Lee calling up Jack Kirby and saying, "Let's bring back Doctor Doom," and Jack goes off and draws 20 pages of story. It's not that way. My plots are very, very, very detailed, as the artists that I work with will tell you, and very, very tight, and filled with character bits and dialogue and themes and all that stuff. But the great thing with Marvel style is, before you do the final script, you get the artwork back. So you look at the page and it changes something. There's something in your, and oh, I was going to have him say that. And you look at that expression and you realize he can say something else. Or you know what? They don't have to say anything on this page because everything I communicated in my plot is there in the art. I always tell the classic story for me is Spectacular Spider-Man 200 with the death of Harry Osborn. Last 3 pages of that story, and Harry's dying. It's very dramatic, melodramatic. Let's be honest. And I thought, when this art comes in, I am going to have to schmaltz it up and pluck the heartstrings and get poetic. And then Sal's art comes in, and I look at the last 3 pages, and every single thing I asked for in the plot was there. And I actually started to write it, and I went, this doesn't need a word. And if you look at the last 3 pages of that story, there's not a single word on it. And that's the fun of Marvel style. But I love both because when you're working full script, it's like it's all there. But even with full script, and this is what I tell people in my classes, you give that full script to 5 different artists, you're going to get 5 different stories back. It's like a musician working with 5 different producers. The producer is going to play with those dials and the same sounds are there, but that record's going to sound different.
That's great, man. No, and again, this is what I've always appreciated your work. You are so collaborative with your artists, and their voice comes through as much as yours. And again, we can see it in these images that you're teasing us with as far as these new concepts. I mean, again, this is gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. I mean, it's very exciting, and yeah, I think it's terrific, and I'm glad you have that attitude about it.
And
as
that's
well.
why, someone asked me, well, they said, well, you see that all the artists are credited as co-creators. And my feeling is it's comics. It doesn't matter if this idea has been in my head for 25 years. It's not real until that picture is on the page. And like I said, 5 different artists would create 5 different things. The minute they have to visualize the world in my head, they are co-creators of this property. They are equal partners in this property. And that's the way it should be. When I see things where people are tussling about that, it's like, don't tussle about that. It's comics. The minute, it's like there's no film in the camera until they turn in the artwork.
100%, man. No, you're right. The artist A is doing the heavy storytelling lifting because it's a visual medium, but also, that was the Ditko argument or comment when Stan would kind of take most of the Spider-Man glory, at least in Ditko's perception, even in that Jonathan Ross BBC documentary In Search of Steve Ditko.
Yeah. That's a step beyond because Ditko was plotting most of that stuff. It's not, he wasn't just drawing Stan's scripts. You know what I mean? He was plotting
same with Jack
that stuff.
and yeah. And Ramita,
And I think a lot of that, not to take anything away from Stan, who I love and revere, but a lot of that angst could have been avoided had those credits simply said, even giving them credit as co-plotters on all those issues, plot and script,
Great.
Stan Lee, plot and art, Jack Kirby, for all those guys, and it's all taken care of.
I never had the pleasure of talking to Ramita Sr. on the record, but I did meet him at conventions a couple times, and he would talk. And in fact, I just talked to Johnny about the car trips, and literally Ramita starting with the plot and going, what should we have Spider-Man do this time? And things like that on these long road trips and stuff. So no, I get it. And
Yeah.
so no, again, Mark, I think this is really terrific. And as always, because of your years in a positive way, that you really as we get older, and you'll forgive me because I'll throw myself in there as well. I'm a better broadcaster than I was 20 years ago, man,
Right.
and 30 years
Right.
ago. I mean, that's just the way it
Right.
is. And I'm much more comfortable
Well, that's
interviewing.
what I said before. It's those
So
muscles. You've been working those. If you continue to challenge yourself, and that's the difference between, you see some people, they're around for a while, and it's just, you feel like they're just repeating themselves, or they're just in the same corner, and then they kind of drift away. But I think but that's the same. It's not even from being around for years. From the very beginning, I realized, for me to grow as a writer, not just in comics, but in across the board, whether it's prose or TV or movies or whatever, you have to challenge yourself. When I did Moonshadow, which was the thing that really, really changed me as a writer, no one came to me and said, do a personal creator-owned book that will change you forever as a writer. I had to come up, I went and I said, I want to do this. I want to challenge myself. I want to do this. The average editor, and I don't mean this in a negative way, if they're working for Marvel or DC especially, their job is to get the trains out on time and running on time. They want good people who are going to deliver good work on time. And the challenging yourself part, most of the time, is up to you.
Understood. And also it has to fit in a specific pattern or construct. Whereas creator own, you can really,
Right.
your mind, you can do whatever you want. And I'm so glad, as always, that you do bring up things like Moonshadow, because agreed, man. I mean, I had already been such a fan of your Marvel work, and it was Moonshadow and then your DC work. Am I correct, timeline wise?
Well, I started at DC.
Okay,
Then
that's
I
right.
started at DC on the anthology books, and that was the days when you could write 10-page superhero stories too. And then I went to Marvel and did Captain America and Defenders and all that stuff. And then in 85 was when Moonshadow came out.
Okay, that
And
makes
followed
sense.
that up with Blood a Tale, and then I went over to Vertigo, working with Karen and Shelley, and talk about great editors. I mean, and those and they, when working on like that kind of stuff, then you're working with editors, because it's creator owned, who want you to challenge yourself, who encourage. And I don't mean this negatively about the Marvel and DC editors at all. I've worked with great editors, really great editors, who have very creative, great ideas. But I'm just saying that to grow as an artist, really, the responsibility is on you to challenge yourself.
Leandro Damasenko asks an interesting question, but I have a feeling it's going to be more than one answer. He's only looking for one, though. And he says, you've talked about an aspect of your writing, but is there a theme perhaps, that you recognize in your writing as being yours? What do you see as being a characteristic of your voice?
That's a great question. Voice is an interesting thing. I talk about that in the workshops. At least for me, the voice isn't just, you're not, Athena doesn't pop out of your skull. The voice isn't just there unless, there's, I always say there might be a small percentage of people in the world who are such geniuses that they just walk onto the world stage and they're brilliant writers or artists or musicians or whatever they are. For we mortal men, we have to grow and evolve. And one of the things that comes up are themes. You kind of look, suddenly you've been writing for a few years and you look at your work and you see, oh, these are themes of personal identity. And I realize that the core of a lot of what I write is the search for self. It might be a psychological search for self. It might be a search for self through exploring the family that created you, or it might be a search for self in the terms of the search for ultimate meaning. What is this universe? Why are we here? So from the psychological to the cosmic, but that search for self really, really does drive a lot of what I write. And then the answers that I have found in my own life then illuminate that search. So, they're my answers and not everybody's, but that's what we write for, to share our point of view on the universe.
100%, man. No, and it's funny because I was going to say, although as you put it, that is really a very central theme. But I would say that, yeah, the four things that you're even putting out now represent different aspects of yourself and ideas. But that said, you're right. No, it does really come back to, as you said, the person that we present versus the person we really are, or whatever. And I think
Yeah.
that's
And we all have these filters based on our experiences and perception.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing I said about different artists with the same story. You could give 5 writers the same story idea, but they're going to come out vastly different because of the filters of our experiences, of our obsessions, of the themes that haunt us, you know? And the great thing is, like, you're talking about these ideas, like I wake up in the morning and I'm seeing a movie in my head. I'm not seeing the themes or anything. It's only as I develop that I go, oh, here it comes again. There's that theme again. And really, you follow almost any writer and you go to classic writers, whether it's Dickens or Dostoevsky or whoever it is, read their work. Everyone's obsessed with themes that keep coming up and coming up. And you hope that the longer you write, the deeper the exploration can be.
I understand, man. Listen, obviously, people, if you have questions about these new concepts, I am happy to get them, as well as playing the
I'll
hits.
talk about anything. It's okay.
Yeah, and Magic K has a question about playing the hits. In your Spectre run, there was a female version of Hal Jordan. Was that your idea or an artist's idea?
No,
Who came up with it first?
that was my idea. The idea was I was, thinking of the Spectre. When I love these cosmic beings, the supernatural characters, and the DC universe, the supernatural corners of the DC universe, I love. When I was writing Justice League Dark, I was in heaven because you could write any one of those characters that you wanted. But the Spectre is like, he was at this point he was evolving from the spirit of vengeance to the spirit of redemption. But he's a cosmic being. How does he do all this? It's kind of like Santa Claus. How does he do it all in one night? So my idea was that he could appear in any form, anywhere, and any aspect of his own psyche could take form anywhere in the world or anywhere in the cosmos. So the feminine aspects of his psyche took the form of a feminine Spectre, and so that's what I was playing with there.
It was an interesting melding of Hal Jordan and then this new role after redeeming himself, or in the process of redeeming himself.
It was tough, though, I'll tell you, because looking back, I loved that run. I got to work with Ryan Sook and Norm Breyfogle. Those were the 2 main artists on that book. You couldn't ask for 2 better artists. And but at the time, in the years since, I've run into many people who understood what I was trying to do with that book, and they took it in their hearts, because it was one of those books also that was deeply, deeply personal to me. But at the time it was coming out, there was one crowd, they wanted Hal Jordan to be Green Lantern, and I understood that. And there was another crowd, they wanted the Spectre to be that guy that turns into a giant cheese grater and grates your face. And
come on, absolutely, the Fleischer Aparo stuff.
There was a lot of people that were not happy with the way the book was. What is this like weird cosmic spiritual thing you're doing here? But luckily, over the years, I've run into so many people that have that read that series and got it and took it into their hearts. But sometimes you're lucky enough, and your editor gives you the room enough, especially even on these characters that are owned, quote, corporate characters, where you can make them deeply personal. In a way, the Spectre was as personal as if I had been doing it as a creator-owned Vertigo book. Same thing for the 2 years I did Dr. Fate with Sean McManus. Karen Berger and Art Young were editing that book, and they just let me do it. And and I look back on that, and it was like a creator-owned book with a DC character. Doesn't always work that way, so I've been lucky.
I'm very curious to see what kind of. I mean, obviously, they're going back to a lot of the classic stuff about Dr. Fate in the Black Adam movie coming up, or at least that's what it looks like. It'll be interesting to see what interpretation, both of not only Fate, but also, frankly, Black Adam. I hung out with a buddy out of town today, and he was telling me the rumors he heard about Black Adam's origin that are very different from what the original story was. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I guess we'll find out in a couple of weeks.
And the truth is, you can't prejudge any of this stuff. Everybody loves to get up in arms, and a little snippet comes out, and everyone's shaking their fists, or that's not how it's done, or that actor's all wrong. And then the movie comes out, and we all go, "Oh, that's so good." So
I remember when they were making the first Avengers movie, and one of the fights that happened in the city, someone took photos from their phone. And we're posting them, and everyone's like, man, these fights look hacky. And it's like, folks, this is going to be shot on red cam with quick cuts and different angles than just some putz sitting there with his phone and everything. I'm like, you can't judge it by that. Please. Good luck.
Right. Go all the way back to Michael Keaton Batman. Remember that uproar? Right. And
yes.
So that movie certainly tanked, didn't it?
In the letter pages. Exactly, man. God, remember Amazing Heroes and Comics Buyer's Guide? Yeah. What are they doing? I'm never going to watch this.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Now we're all pissed off.
We all watched it over. Right. And everybody's pissed off that we don't get to see him again.
Exactly. I mean, really, everyone's like, hey, this is going to be great. Keaton Batman. No, sorry. We got to figure out the money that we've blown. It is honestly, and Mark, you could comment or not, but I find this so interesting because literally this week I had Patrick Schumacher on, the showrunner for the Harley Quinn animated show, which I think is just so great, and was relieved to hear that a season 4 has been greenlit. And then, literally in the last 2 days, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, Adult Swim, a lot of your favorite cartoons, they're going to be gone by the end of the month, and it's like on HBO Max, and it's like, wow, man. Well, I mean, it's yay for
I
Harley
know,
Quinn,
yeah.
but
I know people that are working at some of these companies, and they're all basically like this now because everyone's looking over their shoulder because they don't know what's coming. They don't know if they're going to have jobs tomorrow. They don't know what's going to happen to the material they're working on. It's got to be a very, very unnerving time. Plus they just got used to the first corporate overlord, AT&T, and then they get sold to the new corporate
yeah,
overlord. I
you
hope it
know,
all works out because I have to tell you, HBO Max is actually great. There's a lot of great stuff on HBO Max.
I
So
agree.
I hope it continues to stay the way it
I
is.
Man, I so hear you. And also, mentioning Warner Brothers and even Warner Brothers Animation, you've had a great run in many years.
All the animated movies that I've written are on HBO Max right now. I
Indeed.
have like 5 or 6 of them. They're all up there, and a bunch of the shows that I've written for are up there. So it's great to have it all out there, and I hope it stays
Yeah.
there because every once in a while I'm on the treadmill and what do I want to watch? I'm going to watch one of those movies I wrote.
Hey, I don't honestly, man. Literally, Red Sun, the Batman Bad Blood. Was it Bad Blood, but or
Yeah,
just the
I did
trilogy?
Batman versus Robin and Batman Bad Blood and
Yeah.
Constantine City of Demons and
Yes. The
Speeding Bullets
Deathstroke.
and Deathstroke Knights and Dragons and yeah.
Good stuff, man. No,
Yeah.
no, no. And of course, your Justice League episodes as well.
Yeah, yeah.
You
That's
know.
why it was fun working with James Tucker on that Justice League Infinity series, which the
Yes.
collected edition came out, I guess, in June or something like that. So that's out there, the whole series. It was great.
Mark, that's the last time we talked, and truly, you guys stuck the landing. It was such a great series, and again, both of you know the subject so well, but it's just great to have you guys back doing it, and just like Dini and Alan Burnett doing the Batman animated
Yeah,
series
yeah,
recent comic book as well. It's like, no, these things retain the tone of what made the animated shows great, but also again, you get that wonderful giant bigger canvas of both story length, but
yeah,
also
yeah.
you can just do more.
And it was great working with James. James and I had worked on a bunch of things together, but it's really different when you're working one on one. And I really got to know him in a way that I hadn't known him before. And you've had him on the show, haven't you?
I have. I was going to say
What a
he's become
great
a very
guy.
nice
What a
acquaintance.
great
Absolutely.
guy. Oh my
Yes.
God.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I'm always thrilled when he decides to come back, and I don't even know. I know he's working on something. I don't know if it's been
I think
announced,
he's
but
working on that Batman show, isn't he? The Bruce Timm
you
show.
know, honestly, that's one of the things that I mean, they kind of made the announcement that even though it may not be on HBO Max, that they are going to shop it around,
Right. And
and
if
it
I
will
was Netflix
somewhere.
or Amazon, I would be grabbing that thing in 10 seconds.
Good Lord, yes. My
Yeah.
God. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the amount of talent, Tim Tucker, Matt Reeves, of course, Brubaker being the head writer, and the writers that he has commissioned to work on that. Yeah, I honestly, I haven't, I don't want to because again, if it's like something in flux, I don't want to,
Right. Well,
seem like be nosy. Everyone thinks like I'm not here to scoop things. I'm
right.
not Lois Lane. I
Right.
am I am. It's a talk show, and it's like, hey, if you can't talk about something, it's
Right.
okay.
We're all reading the same stuff online and making the same guesses is all it really is at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah, absolutely true, man. Um, are there any DC or Marvel projects coming up for you, or are you,
I have,
obviously this
yeah,
is going to keep you
coming
busy?
in November. I have another Spider-Man series coming called The Lost Hunt.
Oh, very
You know,
nice.
so the Ben Riley series took place in that era in the '90s when Ben had just taken over as Spider-Man for the first time after his 5-year exile. So the question became, well, what were Peter and Mary Jane up to? And the only thing we knew about was that series that I think Fabian had done called The Final Adventure, at the end of which Peter was left without any powers. So, and they said they wanted something relating to Craven. That's what they came to me with. I don't know why they would come to me about Craven, but they came to me. Um, and what was interesting was I had this, part of me is like, what the hell else do I have to say about Craven? Except I had this character in the back of my head that I've been thinking about for a couple of years that tied into Craven's origin. How did he go from this broken, exiled Russian aristocrat to quote Craven the Hunter, there's a piece in between that was missing and a character that was missing in between. So that character becomes central to this. And if we remember, there was a character called Gregor back in the 90s who was kind of Craven's right-hand man.
Yes.
He's central to this. And so now we have a powerless Peter Parker. Imagine if Craven's Last Hunt took place and Peter had no powers and a very pregnant wife. So we get to explore, for me, it's the question of what really makes this man a hero. It ain't the webs and it ain't sticking to walls. It's Peter Parker. And that's what that story explores. And then there's this whole question of the backstory of what made Craven, where, what turned this man into that, and what's the missing piece. And it's a great new character that I'm very excited about that we introduce.
And that starts in November. And again, the title of that book?
The Lost Hunt.
Spider-Man: The Lost Hunt. Very cool.
Yeah.
David Finn has a couple of interesting questions, and especially the second part of his question. Speaking of animated adaptations, would you be interested in doing an animated movie of the 90s Batman Dracula comics? Or, and this is the one I would love to see, your own Speeding Bullets one-shot that you did with Eduardo Barreto. Yeah, and I agree, David.
I would do Speeding. I've actually, it's come up in conversation occasionally, with those guys about doing Speeding Bullets, because I think that's made. It's not that doesn't mean they're doing anything about it. It's just come up in conversation.
No, but that's good that they're thinking about it. So
it would be. I think it's perfect. I mean, it fuses the Batman and Superman mythos. What's the plural of mythos? Mythoses?
Mythi? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Probably. I think the plural of mythos is mythos. Probably.
I would imagine.
It fuses those two things together. I think it'd make a great animated movie. So anytime they're ready, I would write that in a heartbeat.
And Eduardo's like subtle change to the Batman costume.
Yeah. McFarlane Toys. I just got it someone gave it to me last week. They put out a figure of the.
Oh, that's great.
Of the Speeding Bullets Batman Superman character.
Absolutely. That's so fit, man. What a sad loss. We all miss him. He was such a wonderful artist. And his son is a fine artist as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's great.
I know his son was working with, one of the last things that Eduardo was working on and stuff. And right now it's escaping me. Maybe somebody in the chat might remember. But, and I think I'm correct on that. But regardless, that, again, what a great one shot. Are there, again, Craven and things like that, and are there animated things that Marvel doesn't do as many animated films?
Yeah, it's funny too, because I think do Craven's Last Hunt as an animated, just like these DC movies. It doesn't mean you can't do it as a live action movie eventually. Plus, I've always said it's like, well, for a third of your movie, your hero is buried alive. He's having some hallucinations, but it's really the $20 million actor doesn't want to be buried alive for a third of the movie. He wants to be out there with his mask off half the time. So I think it would be great to do Craven's Last Hunt as an animated movie, and I'm volunteering once again to write that one as well.
Henry, building on some of your writing quotes, you mentioned that when using the Marvel method, you would see an artistic happy accident that would change your writing, like Spectacular Spider-Man 200. Might you lose that using full script? Yeah,
I think you might, but even the same thing, it might come back sometimes full script. It's all lettered, it's all ready to go, and you look at it, and you don't want to do this too much because the letter has done a lot of work, and you might think, oh, I can take that balloon out, or we could leave that out. It doesn't need it though. The picture, but the happy accident thing is really more a result of working Marvel style, And again, when I'm writing a plot, I'm talking about page by page, panel by panel, angle by angle most of the time,
Okay.
But it doesn't matter because once those pictures hit the page, it changes. And again, the fun of the full script is that you really sort of you're creating the whole thing right then and there. And again, even then, the right artist will lift that story up and the wrong artist will tear it down. But that's the truth about comics. Every element of the process can lift it up or tear it down. The wrong inker with the penciler, you could have the greatest penciler in the world. The wrong inker will completely screw up his work. The right inker can take an artist who still needs work and lift him up. As a writer, I'm very, very careful about lettering because lettering is the delivery system for my story. And I think the average reader doesn't realize what an impact the lettering has. And I've seen it over the years. Bad lettering will take my story, and maybe I think it's like an A-level story, and bad lettering will take it down to a B or a C level because the way your eye is taking in those words. And conversely, a really good letterer might take my B story and lift it up to an A story. And then the coloring on top of that, especially as coloring has gotten so much more sophisticated.
Agreed.
You look at that Layla page, Layla in the Land
Yes,
of
I'm about to
After,
bring it back up
and
again.
as
Absolutely.
brilliant as the art is, the color just takes it to a whole other level.
Oh yeah. Absolutely, 100%, man. And also, I wonder, as someone, as you say, who started doing 10-page anthology stories where you really had to be punchy and the brevity of the dialogue was necessary, the word balloons and stuff, to the 80s, and it seemed like it was much more of an open thing. Do you
It was.
find do you find your scripts kind of going in a hills and valley kind of way of less dialogue, more dialogue, now less dialogue again? How do you see that?
It really depends on the story, and actually, it depends on the scene in the story. If you follow my work, you know I can be very verbose,
But
and
that's
I
great, man.
also, and I also, as you'll see, like in Wisdom, I do something that's similar that I've done in Dematteis and Moonshadow, a lot of projects over the years, where some sections of the story are really like illustrated prose. So you have straight comic book sequences, and then you might have 3 pages, and boy, did Mandrake do a beautiful job with these full page illustrations with a lot of text,
Look at
filling
this.
you in on backstory and getting deeper into things. Then you go back to comics and there may be 3 pages where there's only 2 words on those 3 pages. It depends on the needs of the story. It depends on the needs of that moment in the story.
Well, again, I have never had a problem with the old days of the 80s when they were more indulgent and allowed for a lot more space for writing and things like that.
Right. I
And
mean,
and
look at the
again,
stuff Keith and I did. Look at it. Look at how many balloons would be on the page. I had one editor said I've never counted more balloons on a page than anyone. But that's what that stuff. When Keith and I work together, it's about. It's really about that. It's almost like 1930s movies. That rat-a-tat dialogue. It's just back
yes,
and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
absolutely, man. That's hilarious. Yeah, I want to. Howard Hawks, His Girl Friday.
Yeah, that
That
was
kind of
exactly the
punchiness.
movie I was thinking of. That's exactly the movie I was
I'm
thinking
with
of.
you, man. See,
Yeah, yeah.
Mark, again, we're cut from the same cloth, man. And that's why I love talking to you because exactly we have these things. It isn't confirmed yet. His agent hasn't made it happen, but I'm saying this as a teaser for both the audience and also I'm curious to hear what your reaction is. But Alex Ross in his Fantastic Four Full Circle that certainly has been prominent in commercials here on Word Balloon. He told me that in the old days his model for Reed Richards was Russell Johnson, the professor from Gilligan's Island.
That's actually really good.
And you can see it in Marvels and in some of the images in the
Yeah.
commercial. But you also see some more modern takes that he has. And he has said that he has transitioned from thinking of Russell Johnson to Gary Conway from Land of the Giants.
Wow, I got to wait. I have to take my mind back in time and picture that face. I can see that. Was
and
that 60s rock jawed hero?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, man. And a very Kirby face and Kirby
Yes.
eyes.
Yes.
Even Burke's Law, where he was like, what's his face is Amos Burke, the actor, Gene
Gene
Barry.
Barry.
Gene Barry's leg man. I love the whole concept of Burke's Law. I'm a police captain, but I'm also a millionaire, and
Right.
I've got
Right.
a
Very
Rolls
realistic. It
Royce.
was very
Yeah,
realistic.
and
And
again, it's Gene Barry. Gene Barry always had, magnetism, but as did Gary Conway. I am so excited to talk to him because Burke's Law was an Aaron Spelling show. Land of the Giants was Irwin Allen. And all the guest stars that they had on those shows and stuff. It's like, I cannot wait. Plus, now he runs a winery and is still, he's like doing great. And because of the Alex Ross thing, his people contacted Alex people like, hey, I'd really like to come out and promote this more. And I've been
oh,
itching to do
that's
some
great.
interviews.
That's
I'm
really
like,
great.
I would love to talk to Gary Conway. That would be amazing.
I've said for years, if they do a Fantastic Four movie, I would set it in the 60s, or at least start in the 60s.
I
And
agree.
then if you want to do a time jump at some point and bring them into the current day, do it. But
Or maybe they get lost in the negative zone and then
yeah,
come out in modern day.
yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
another Captain America
But
idea.
milk it for the era that it was, the Kennedy New Frontier era, pure Lee and Kirby magic.
Caesar of Rome, Hale, has this question.
Hail
Why did
Caesar.
Captain Marvel or Shazam leave the Justice League International so early?
I think it was a rights issue. It had nothing to do with us. I think
Wow.
if I'm remembering correctly, it worked in some way that they could only use him for X number of months, and they had to leave him out of the books. So it wasn't our choice. It was so much fun writing that character, especially the way we were doing him.
Yes.
But someone said, all right, we can't use him anymore. And that was the end of that. So there's no deep character reason for that. It was just someone over our head said, forget it, take him out of the book.
What'd you think of the Shazam movie?
I actually liked it.
Yeah, me
I
too.
liked it. I
Yeah.
thought, I thought, with a couple of exceptions, it was actually kind of kid friendly and adult friendly. There were a couple of scenes in there that I thought were too violent for little kids, but the rest of it was just fun. It had a
Oh
good
yeah.
heart and it was fun.
When the subway train shows up, it looks exactly like it did when it was in CC Beck that originally drew it
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff.
It was no, it was charming. It was really really charming.
It really was. It was like modern, but also very Flash Gordon-y, as I'm sure
Yeah,
Beck's designs were leaning towards back in the day. So
it's sort of
no,
like
good stuff.
in a totally different way, but it reminded me of the first Captain America movie, which was very sort of had that old
Oh, yeah.
fashioned entertainment. Well, I remember when it came out, and I was like, "There's no way they're going to be able to do Captain America well." And they're setting it in World War II, and he's going to look stupid in the costume. And my wife, of all people, said, "I'm going to go see this movie." And I said, I didn't want to see it. She came home and said, "You have to see this movie." So she saw it a second time and took me to see it, and I fell in love with it. It was
You know,
such a good, still one of my favorite Marvel movies, one of my top three probably.
I agree. I am looking forward to Anthony Mackie doing Sam Wilson as Captain America. But that said, they could have done another 10 Chris Evans Captain America movies.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
he really, and also I've loved how in real life his Twitter account has emulated a lot of the values of Captain
right,
America, and that's
right.
been great to see as well. No, great steward of the character, and again, that's isn't it interesting, Mark, that thank God Kevin Feige came at the right time, but also had several working under Avi Arad and the previous Marvel film regimes before Iron Man. Had done hit and miss comic book superhero movies and villain movies to the point where when finally the first Iron Man movie came out, he knew what he was doing. But isn't it interesting that DC has not found their Kevin Feige? And I wonder sometimes, and in fact, on background talking to certain people, they've said they're looking more for a financial producer rather than a creative producer. And it's like you got to understand the stories and the heroes
Yeah,
to really
yeah,
do it
yeah.
right.
I said something on Twitter, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and I mentioned Bruce Timm, but I thought any of these guys that have worked on the animated side, Bruce Timm, James Tucker,
James, yep,
all these guys, there's so many talented guys who know these characters and these worlds inside and out, and they've done definitive versions. You're not going to find it. You'll find other versions of the Justice League as good as Justice League Unlimited, but I don't think you're going to find any version that's better because they
agreed.
understood that. They understood those characters, and when
Yeah,
they changed things that still respected the core of the characters. They were able to take all these
yes.
different elements and make this incredible soup that became something new.
I don't know if you've been watching the Harley Quinn animated series, but I can
No,
say
I
the
haven't
same
seen
thing
it.
for
Yeah,
that.
is it?
It's
Yeah, I'll have to
it.
check it out.
I mean, it is hard satire and definitely R-rated satire. But that said, you cannot deny the writers' room love of the characters because they all are still very consistent in what they were in the DC in the whatever straight DC universe. But now with a comedic twist that again still retains what makes them great when they're playing it straight. So and again as someone that really has excelled in doing superhero comedy as you have. Yeah, I hope so, at some point you do get to see it.
I'll
Here,
check it out.
Peter Beiser says these characters will outlive all of us. You hit the nail on the head. These creators and actors are caretakers who will continue to pass them to the next generation as the ones of the past have. Indeed, I completely agree.
Yeah,
And then,
we're all adding to this thing. I hope
yes,
I haven't used this metaphor before, but I have this image of like this giant story whale, and that it's like this giant whale moving through the ocean, and we're all like Captain Ahab. And so for a
indeed,
while, I jump on the whale, and I'm not hurting the whale. No whales are harmed here. And I take my harpoon and I carve a story into the side of the whale. And then at some point, the whale's going to throw me off, and there's like 100 other people jumping, and the whale just keeps expanding to make room for more and more of this stuff. But that whale's going to be going and swimming and moving forward long after we're all gone. But all of our contributions are creating aspects of that thing and growing it and evolving it. And it's an interesting thing, this shared universe business. It's really interesting. Frustrating sometimes for creators as well, for obvious reasons.
sure.
But but it's a unique thing, and I think it's particularly unique to comics, that a couple of guys, Stan and Jack and Steve, say, they start making up this stuff, and suddenly, what is it, 60 years later, all it's like we're all coming with our cups and pouring it in the ocean, but each cup has something unique in it. There's this unique flavor that's going in there, and we're
They find
all
something.
adding to this, it's
No,
fascinating.
they find something new to say. No, you're absolutely good Lord. Scott Snyder on Batman, Tom King on Batman, so many Marvel writers, Chip Zdarsky, following a tremendous Daredevil run and is still just nailing it. And God, Mark Russell, I think, is another great new
But
writer
that's
at
the
both
trick, what you
companies.
said, finding something new in it. Like this Ben Riley and this new Spider-Man thing.
Yeah,
If they were just nostalgia fests, I wouldn't be interested. I don't want to just
of
go
course.
like, let's do our old hits. Let me get the guitar and I'll sing that song, from 1987. I want to find something new to say about these characters in their world, or there's no point in doing it.
Speaking of music, are you still making new music?
Yeah, I'm still writing songs, and yeah.
Cool.
I've got so many songs. I keep been threatening to go back into the studio for years now. I've got, I could do like a triple album at this point,
Ah, would you ever, like, me? I mean, being a broadcaster, and again, thank God for the democratization of technology and what the internet provides. That I don't need a radio studio anymore. I'm talking to you from my couch and my laptop.
Right.
Um, do you have a home studio?
I do now. I like playing with other people.
Sure.
I am also, I play, a couple of different instruments, but I'm not Paul McCartney. I'm not a virgin. I'm not going to sit down and play all the parts myself, and I don't want to. I
No, I
like
understand.
I like going in with a group of guys. I have a vision in my. It's almost like working with the artist. Same thing. I have a vision in my head. Here's my song. Here's how I see it. Here are the parts that I hear. Now let's put that together. And then the guitarist goes, because like, yes, you know what I mean. And off
Sure.
you go. To me, that's the fun. So I'm hopefully I'll be able to get back in the studio with a good bunch of guys and get some of these songs down.
Do you have regulars that you'll go to and that have you've
I have,
collaborated?
I have people, and I have like some old friends that I used to play in bands with from years ago. That
Sure.
we're always threatening to get back together and play again.
Hey, Max Collins tells me about his, revivals he does with his old bandmates and stuff. And a good friend of mine is a Chicago drummer that, always still was doing it at home. But really, I'm so proud of him because really in like the last 15 years has really gotten into performing again with live bands and even has a great practice studio that he's able to get to and just work things out. And it's a wonderful space. Do
That's
you have
great.
that ability as well?
I'm very lo-fi. I write a song, I take my phone out, I record it on my phone, and I save it that way. The arrangements are in my head. I hear the string parts, I hear the guitar parts, I hear the piano parts, I hear the drum parts. That's all in here.
Sure.
It's funny to mention Chicago because when I did the last time I was in the studio, it was in the '90s with the CD that I did then. It was all Chicago musicians on that one.
Oh, that's great.
I recorded
That's
it in
excellent, man.
Chicago. Yeah, yeah.
A month or so ago, I threw up a great photo that happened at a recording studio here in Chicago, and it was from the mid '80s. It was my one encounter and a very nice one with the great Elton John,
Ah.
and it was amazing. Yeah, I was, and I was thinner and cuter back then. So
I
I'll be
can't
honest.
imagine you could possibly be cuter, John.
It's true. It's true. But no, it really was. I mean, again, I was, the first 10 years of my radio career was in music. And then I made the move to sports. And, that's where I was for another 10 years. And then the last 10 were really just doing commercials and that stuff. It's so great to be able to do interviews again, as I did during my sports years. So
Yeah.
that's the great opportunity. In fact, today, 95th anniversary of a great boxing match, the second Jack Dempsey Gene Tunney fight, the long count, where Tunney was down for more than 10 seconds and was a hot, controversial thing for
You know what's so
decades.
interesting about what just happened, John? As soon as you said that, you went into your announcer mode. It was like I was listening to a documentary. It was great. And you
Well,
went into
actually, I
it was
actually
great.
posted it back in 2002 when it was the 75th anniversary. I made an audio documentary and had Studs Terkel and Roger Kahn
Oh
among
wow.
my, yeah. Oh my God. I cannot find my hour-long Roger Kahn conversation. He had just written a Dempsey biography, and of course, great baseball writer, a great sports writer in general. And it was such a pleasure to talk to him and the stories he had, not just about the obvious, but so many real insights to Dempsey beyond his boxing career, and a very interesting man. He was part of that 20s group of the golden age of sports heroes with Babe Ruth and Bobby Jones, and I forget who the tennis player was of that time, but like there were 4 or 5, that were kind of the classic Paul Gallup, sports writers that they would just glow about those 20s athletes and stuff. The heroes of their day.
Right. This is kind of where we part company, because I am so not a sports guy. I'm sitting here just going,
I know. I was going to say, all right, I'm boring the shit out of Mark.
No, you're not boring me. It's just that I don't have that well of knowledge,
It's all good, man. No.
It was something I want to mention. I forgot to mention
Please.
earlier, which is a project that came out recently that I'm very excited about. Didn't you had some folks from Neotext on your show at one point?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes.
So folks that don't know about that Neotext, which is the website is neotextcorp.com. Great original fiction and nonfiction, a lot of it illustrated. So I wrote a novella for them that came out in June. Yeah, called The Excavator. You can go to the Neotext website, read a sample, then click on over to Amazon and buy it. But it's the first prose I've done since my novel Imaginalis came out, and that's about 10 years ago. So I'm very excited about it, and so I want to get the word out about that. If you like my work, if you enjoy my work, and you've never read my prose, you can check it out. So go to Neotext for a free sample, and then go buy it.
And these are very reasonably priced. I really.
Oh yeah. The ebook is like $1, but they also and if you don't like ebooks, they also have a print book. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, it's honestly, it is a great company, and I'm always happy to talk about that. I've had many writers, as you say, from a nonfiction standpoint. Chloe Maval has come on, and I think she's great essayist about pop culture.
I've read some of her stuff. She's great. Mm-hmm.
And also, all right, damn it, real deep voice, Marvel writer, young guy, Wolverine. Come on, everybody, shame on me. I can't believe I'm not remembering his name.
As soon as we're done, you'll remember.
100%.
Anyway, it's a supernatural thriller called The Excavator. I'm working on another one for them right now.
Cool.
Should be out next year. So it's always fun to go off and do prose and talk about forget full script. Talk about being in control of your materials. It's great.
Well, Mark, let's not wait a year for the next conversation. Let's make sure we get together either for the November Spider-Man stuff or the Neotext thing whenever that comes out.
Right.
And also as these wonderful stories start coming out from Spellbound Comics.
The Kickstarter will be launching in early October. We don't have the date completely defined yet, but it'll be keep following me on Twitter and go to Spellbound and you'll get that information. And as I said, all this work, all these years, this is one of the most exciting things I've ever done. And as you know, these Kickstarters are a roll of the dice.
Sure.
And you need support. So people that if you like my work, if you've appreciated my work, then please come along with us on this journey, because the goal is to continue all 4 of these series. Did I mention the voting part of this? I don't.
Please, no, you did not. No.
Oh, so anyone that comes along and supports all 4 of the books or buys the collection that contains all 4 gets to vote on which is the first one that will continue. So you read all 4 books and you might say, I want Godsend to continue. And you get to vote on that. Or people might decide, hey, we want to see chapter 2 of all 4 of them. We'll do number 2 across the board in another collection. But that's a fun aspect of this, that the audience will get to participate in the decision about what comes next.
That sounds great, man. Well, follow Mark on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, I'm sure. Give us all your handles on social media, Mark.
I think it's all Twitter. It's at @Dematteis. Facebook is the same thing. Now, Instagram, you got to be careful because there's some guy out there that keeps popping up pretending to be me. I don't know why.
Jesus.
Don't you have better things to do with your life? You
know
what I mean?
Shit.
So Good on Lord. Instagram, it's jm.dematteis, except no substitutes.
Indeed.
The substitutes are not me. And every once in a while he pops up and someone will see it, or my daughter will call me and say, oh, and then he gets reported and he disappears for a while.
Crazy. I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, and my website is jmdematteis.com. So all those places. Twitter is my main squeeze in social media.
I'm with you, man. A new writing course coming up?
Not at the moment. No,
Okay,
I'm really busy right now, and I need the time and the
sure,
space to get that. But I do still
sure.
have, for anyone that's interested, I do my story consulting. If you go to my website and go to the story consultation section, I work one-on-one with writers. So someone has a comic book miniseries or a piece of fiction or a screenplay or something. I read the material, we get on Skype, we discuss, we dissect, and we work together to help them shape their story.
Mark, that is so great to hear because truly I have encountered viewers when I'm doing an interview go, "Hey, so and so, can you read my book?" Well, that's a professional question, and you should be paid for your time, and it
Right.
really is a professional service, and it's
And I
great to
love doing it. I love doing it because it's just to work with someone one-on-one and take them from the sort of this unformed beginning to the end product and watch them grow and evolve as a writer. And inevitably, I'm learning as I'm teaching. So it's really so. Just go to my website and look under story consultation if you have any interest in that. And I think I've covered all the plugs for tonight.
Okay, a quick thank you from Caesar of Rome for creating Tora and Nort. Such fun
Nor.
characters. Tora has a great episode in Harley Quinn
Oh,
and has
really?
a very interesting hookup. And if there's any possibility,
I guess I'll
she's
have to
definitely
check this out.
she's definitely R-rated. And also, God, I love what Tom King and Greg Smallwood are doing with Tora in their Human Target series. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I've heard about it. I haven't read it though.
I would imagine for you, it's almost like seeing an old girlfriend with a new boyfriend or something like that. Or
Yeah,
maybe it's not. I don't know your feeling on it.
it's just sort of you just sort of move on, and yet it is. It's like family. It's sort of like I guess it is if you think about it. It's like well, that's just another actor pretending to be my father. That's not my father. But at the same time, I've heard great things about this
The whole
series.
story, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the suspects and someone has poisoned the human target, a very DOA kind of
Uh
plot
huh.
line,
Uh huh. Oh,
and
that's great.
he's going through the Bwahaha Justice
Oh, that's
League.
fantastic.
and
That's
and yeah,
fantastic.
it's great. But yeah, Tora is really she's not a femme fatale, but she definitely is like the girlfriend, and maybe she'll turn. I have no idea how this is all going to work out. But also, Beatrice just finally started making her appearances in the story as well.
Oh, great. Oh, I
But
guess
yeah, it's
I'll
great.
have to check this out then.
Yeah, if you can handle someone else playing with your
Oh yeah,
toys,
I mean,
you know,
we go back to what we were saying about the shared universe.
yes,
They're not
yes,
your characters.
I'm hip.
You
Yeah,
know
I
what I mean?
understand.
They're your characters
No,
while you're playing with them, and you will always have that connection and that affection. And Keith and I always say, our version of those characters exist in their own universe anyway. So the other versions that you see are someone else creating their version, their universe out of those characters.
but also
Um,
even seeing, and again, we all love Kevin McGuire and what he did with the characters and the others that collaborated with you. That said, Greg Smallwood is really bringing this wonderful Robert McGinnis paperback cover
yeah, I've seen
kind of
some of the
noir
art. It's
aesthetic.
really, really striking. Yeah.
Wow. And really, I mean, I've always had a crush on Tora. And with apologies to McGuire, she's never been lovelier. I mean, really, it's insane.
Well, I wish you both the best, John.
I know I'm like Dave Andrews and Laura enjoying the picture too much. It's like, all
I
right, buddy,
forget who
calm
it
down.
was. Some friend of mine who was telling me that when he was like 12, he like was in love with Crystal from the Inhumans. That was the woman that he lusted after. No, not like not a girl from school, not some movie star. It was Crystal from the Inhumans.
Well, Alex told me, along with Gary Conway being his Mr. Fantastic, uh, Deanna Lund, who was the redhead in Land of the Giants, is his Sue Storm.
So
And it's
he's
like,
really going 60s on this thing. That's great.
I get it. I so get it. It's fantastic. So, well, Mark, as always, man, thank you. And even Henry says, thanks for coming on Word Balloon, answering their questions.
It's a
I,
pleasure. Always a pleasure, John.
you know it, man. I feel the same way. Well, Friday, we're taking a day off, but man, next week's going to be really busy. I'm talking to Brad Meltzer and Scott Snyder, among others, next week. It's going to be a full week on Word Balloon. I hope you'll join us. And until next time, everybody.